for us to do all of that. Just to be for the sake of time, because we have 7 committees, 4 more. Okay.
I'm going to take my mask off, so I'm going to stay out here. This meeting is kind of a committee of the whole, because all the committees are on here except for committee of the whole. And I also try to put information on here so newer members could get a little bit more used to what we do. That's what the opening paragraphs are all about, just kind of explaining how I handle minutes and how we do committees and recordings and things like that. So I'm assuming everybody can hear me. Hopefully everybody online can hear me. Mayor, you can hear me, correct? Just
we can hear you. We can hear you pretty clear.
Good.
Speaking into the microphone definitely helps, by the way.
Okay, good. Yeah, I have my microphone on. Okay. So the first committee is planning and zoning. Now, the new committee this year is Mr. Burley is committee chair, Ms. DeMarco, and Mr. Lawrence. And I don't have a whole lot for this committee, but because we have some new members, let me just explain a couple of things to you. And usually with this meeting, by the way, we don't have a lot of staff here. So that's when Mr. Branzel is not here. He also was having computer problems though too. Outstanding items, I always try to list, and I'm not going to repeat this for every committee. I always try to list items that I want to keep in front of council or the council wants to keep in front of them. And I put that on here just so you remember that these are things we have to deal with. The sidewalk inspection is minor, and usually Mr. Branzel is the one discussing that. Silversmith Development, if for those of you who aren't aware, Gary Silversmith owns the old research center site, and we have been concerned about what his development plans are. And he's owned this for a number of years now. Formerly was owned, of course, by Westinghouse and then CBS Westinghouse. So I keep Silversmith on here because periodically he pops up again. Either what he's planning pops up again, or there's some discussion among council members. So that's the reason why it's listed under outstanding items. But I don't have anything new to report on that. So I'm going to just move on to code update. Mr. Branzel also has, as I mentioned, computer issues. But the one big question had to do with the dilapidated property. Mr. Gilland is going to mention that later under his report, that we have a grant to demolish a dilapidated property that is no longer considered dilapidated because somebody has purchased it and they claim they're going to refurbish it. So we have been looking to transfer that grant to another property, and he and Mr. Branzel have been discussing it. The last one that was discussed back in December was 1019 Sherwood Road, but at the time council said that property they believed that was also going to be for sale. And so they were not certain it made sense to demolish it. So we put that on hold, and Mr. Gilland and Mr. Branzel still have to come up with another property or we lose the grant. The grant has to be for demolition. That's the only thing it can be for some property. Dave, if you can hear me, have you and Dawn talked about it anything further with this?
He mentioned another property, but he was going to check into it because he wasn't sure of the status of it. It was listed with a real estate agent. I told him that that was not a problem. It still could be condemned. It's still a condemnable property because the real estate agent told him that it is being sold mainly for the lot, not the building that's on it, because everyone kind of knows the building is in deplorable condition. I don't have the address with me tonight, but Mr. Branzel does have it. And I believe he was going to put that forth to the committee as a recommendation that we demolish that property. But I believe he wanted to talk to, I don't remember whether it was a solicitor or whether it was the real estate agent before he did that. I'm not sure why. I don't remember. It's been a month since we talked about it. And I'm sorry, I can't recall exactly what he was going to do. But there is an address for consideration, but it's not being put forth at this time.
We still have some time on the grant?
I can try to look it up. Yeah, I believe we can still transfer it. I'm not 100% sure on that, but I believe we can still transfer the property because I haven't had anything. The grant's usually good for 2 years.
So let's try to get some discussion for the next committee meeting in February, if that's possible, okay, between you and Dawn.
But what I'm going to do before borough property comes up, which I guess that's what it's under, I'm not sure what committee it comes under, but I'm looking right now to see if I can find the address.
Okay, well, we'll move on while you're doing that.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Move on, and then when it comes to me, I will update you as to whether I found it or not, and what the status might be. If we can, maybe the committee could approve it pending Mr. Branzel's clearance of whatever issue he had with the real estate agent.
Okay.
So go ahead, and I'll get back to you on it.
Okay. That was the only business I had for planning and zoning. Nobody had given me any other business, but if there was something, even with the new agenda rules, the way I have it structured to report this online, you could still bring up some other issue if there was any other issue, but I don't think there is anything. Do you know of any other issue, Mr. Riley? I believe that was probably it for now, right? Okay, and I'm going to move on to the second committee, which is public safety. The chair for that is Mr. Bioki, with members Mr. Lawrence and Mr. Watkins. Again, there's one outstanding item on there, and that's just as a reminder that we've been pursuing the idea of putting security cameras at various locations, and that's been ongoing. And I'll give you more of a report on where some of that stands later. I don't want to spend a lot of time on it now, so I'm just going to move on from there. I'm always asked to put on the latest utility bills from the fire department. The most recent ones that council would have seen would have been November of 2021, mainly because December is not closed out yet. So you'll get that soon with a financial report from the treasurer, but I don't have it at this time. So these were the bills that the fire department had incurred. And the fire department had also sent me a year-end report that was 6 or 7 pages long. I emailed that to everybody this afternoon rather than take your time now. But one thing you might note on there is that there is a new chief. Mr. Thielacker asked to become assistant chief. That was at your discretion, correct? And so Mr. Colella is taking over as fire chief. So if anybody is going to be giving a fire report, it would probably be one of those two at future meetings. I don't really have anything else to say about the bills unless you have a question or any comments about them. Then EMS, at the time I printed this, the December report that I had been sent would not print. And so I emailed back to Woodland Hills EMS and let them know that. And I got it just before the meeting, and I emailed a copy of that report to all of you for December, their activity report, so you'd have that. So that's in your email. As far as chief's reports are concerned, we have 2 chiefs here. Chief Williams is online. Assistant Chief Thielacker is next to me here. And the monthly police report that Chief Williams always gives us is attached to your agenda and right after this information. So Chief Williams, you want to go ahead?
Thank you, Mr. Morris. First off, I'd like to start with, we're back on our previous COVID protocols. With this increase of this new virus, we felt that it's time to get back to our other protocols, which include taking more phone calls to our people who have issues for calls for service. So in some cases, we will not respond to their home. We will, in fact, give them a call, and generally they're happy to do it that way because they don't want to see us any more than we want to be stopping into their homes. A lot of calls do require our actual in-person arrival. So those types of calls we will still be responding to. But again, as we are back in this time of unbelievable numbers, we were trying to be careful on our end as well as protecting the public. So again, we're back on that protocol. Secondly, we've had a few accidents lately that have involved pedestrians. I wanted to update you on that. In both of the cases where there were fatalities, apparently the pedestrian basically ran in front of the vehicle and gave them no opportunity to avoid that individual. So, you know, as unfortunate as that is, I just wanted to give you some clarification in case you'd heard other stories out there about how these things have happened. The county police also assist us in those investigations when it becomes a death. So we haven't gotten their completed report yet, but that's the preliminary information at this point. And thirdly, based on the weather conditions that we've had, I know that in the news there was that terrible situation on the highway in one of the other states where people were trapped in their vehicles. And I just wanted to remind people to be prepared for that kind of weather, as we have really had some cold weather lately. And if your car breaks down in this type of weather, when it's 20 degrees and the wind chills too, you want to be able to make sure you call 911 to get us to come and help you. We will come and do that. We will find a way to get your car off the road. We will help you get to some warmer place, because we don't want people sitting out in their vehicles by themselves or blocking roadways that need to be clear. So again, it's important to call 911 right away if you're disabled or your car's on the road or you feel like you're in danger because of whether it be temperatures or snow. We will come and help you. So again, some people just don't seem to understand that that's an option, and they'll sit in their car and try to call their friends who may not be able to get there for an hour. But we don't want to leave people out there. We're here to help people, and we want to be able to do the best we can to get them to a safe area rather than leaving them out there. That's all I have.
Okay.
Questions for the chief? Right, I want to clarify the question. Right. Those two incidents, does it look like preliminaries and speeding was not a factor of those?
No, that's not what this is going to end up being at all. The preliminary information is just really the people have been walking out in the middle of the road. In one case, the gentleman was out in the middle of the road. It was early in the morning at 5:30 in the morning. It was dark out. This first incident happened up by Morrow Road as you come off the parkway. The speed wasn't the issue in that case. The fact that the person was out in the dark wearing dark clothing and walking on the roadway gave the driver of the vehicle basically no opportunity to hit the brakes in time, and he was struck, and unfortunately he passed. And then the second incident, that was down by the Taco Bell, and that incident again, that person ran out across the highway trying to get across the highway for whatever reason and didn't give the person any opportunity to stop, and he was struck. In both cases, it appears that there's a possibility that both were either under the influence of something when they were struck. But again, we don't have that particular information available to us at this point.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else?
Is there any point next month you can give us more details about what happened?
When I get more information from the county, I can certainly provide you with that information. But again,
I think that would be appropriate because we got constituents asking.
I'm sure that's why I wanted to bring this up tonight. I had a feeling that there were going to be some questions about this, and I'd rather just get it out there now so you guys have a little more information available to you. But again, when the county police do a reconstruction on an accident like this, when there's a fatality involved, it's pretty thorough.
Of course. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else have a question for the chief? Ms. DeMarco?
The incident in front of the Taco Bell, that's an area where your nearest crosswalk is almost not going to have to go.
All I heard was crosswalk. I couldn't hear your whole conversation.
The crosswalk that's indicated for pedestrian crossing is not close to the Taco Bell, right?
It goes across, yes, but it wasn't where he was. I think that's what his intent was, but that wasn't where he was crossing. That was the problem.
Anybody else have any questions for the chief?
No, thank you, sir.
Go ahead. Do you have something, Mr. Lawrence?
No, thank you. I'm done.
Assistant Chief Theelector said he doesn't have any fire department report tonight, but does anybody have any questions for him since he's here for a number of committees tonight? No? Okay. There was no committee business that I was given for this committee, so unless somebody has something else to add, public safety, that would be the end of the second committee for the evening. Any other issues or questions?
No,
Okay,
sir.
I'm going to move on to the third committee then, Public Works. This committee chair for this committee, when we begin with the chairs running the meeting, would be Mr. Watkins, with committee members Mr. Baiocchi and Ms. Martin. I have a couple of items, then we'll go to one item really, and then we'll go to the foreman and engineers report. I always put on this meeting Three Rivers Wet Weather Update. Three Rivers Wet Weather, if you're not sure of this for the newer members, is an organization that assists Alcosan communities with the sewer consent decree order requirements. Those are the things that have given us all the sewer billing that we have to pay all the time. They hold regular meetings for engineers, for elected officials and staff. They typically will give me a monthly report of some item, and I always put it on here for a couple of reasons, for one reason rather, and I put it on the business meeting agenda for the same reason. We're supposed to show as part of the consent decree that we are providing information to the public on sewer issues, sanitary and storm. And so consequently, when they send us a report, I put it here, and I also then put it on the business meeting report for Public Works, because that way we're serving the public, letting them know some updated information about consent decrees or whatever else might be going on with Three Rivers Wet Weather and Alcosan. Three Rivers Wet Weather was actually put together by both Alcosan and the health department. That's where that comes from. There is no report for this month, though. They don't always have one. So the next reports are foreman and engineers report. Mr. Gilliland, if you want to give the engineers report, I reordered your report a little bit to fit it better on my agenda, just so you know. So I have your paving up first. Do you want to go ahead, Mr. Gilliland?
Yes, I'd be happy to. Thank you. I have three items. First, the two are just informational. We have a MS4 project. MS4 is Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System. It's a permit we have where we are required by the permit to reduce sediment that goes into the storm sewer system and eventually ends up in the streams. Under the current permit, we're required to reduce sediment. So we have a project for which we have received a grant for about 75%, I believe, of the, or 85% of the cost, which is to improve the pond, which is behind the park and ride lot on Avenue B. And by improving it and redesigning it, it will capture sediment for practically the whole borough before it enters Fall Run and eventually enters Turtle Creek and the Mon River. That work requires a permit from DEP, and we have applied for that permit. DEP has notified us that they are working remotely and that it will be some time before that's approved, but it is in the process. There is a fee for that. It's $1,900 for the permit. Glen Engineering has forwarded the fee and will be invoicing the borough for that amount. That's at some point when the permit is approved. So that's just an update, a little more detail than normal, but for the new members of council. Any questions on that before I move on?
Any questions from anyone? No. Okay, Dave, go ahead. You're fine.
Okay, thank you. The second item is the Fall Run Interceptor project. Again, I'll give you a little more detail since there's new members on council. There is, Alcosan has agreed to take over some sewers in the county in their system where the sewer serves more than one municipality, and they are adding that to their infrastructure, which they will be responsible for. Before they do that, they inspected all these joint interceptors and want repairs done before they will accept them. So we have a project. It's in conjunction with 6 other communities. Forest Hills has the bulk of the cost, which is being shared based on flow data. And Forest Hills is managing the project since the bulk of the project is in Forest Hills Borough. And that project was awarded by council, I believe, in November or December, I think November. And work should begin sometime this month. We haven't received a start date. It is not 100% weather dependent, but it is to a certain point. When it gets below 20, they can't do most of the work. But they are planning to start sometime this month, and I'll keep the council up to date on that as it progresses. The final item I have is that at this time every year, we put together a paving list for the year. The Forest Hills budget includes a 1 mil of taxes to be dedicated towards street improvements. Most of that goes to paving. Some of that goes to public works for crack sealing and hot asphalt patching. The bulk of it is for paving. We have prepared a list which should be attached to my report. I can read through the list. We have 4 alternates from last year that did not get funding. That would be Pacific from Marion to Lenox, Batavia from Berlin to Bevington, Bevington from Braddock to Burlington, and Avenue F from Avenue E to house number 372, where new paving ceased a few years ago. Jim Thielecker and I have also reviewed streets in the borough and have a list that we put together actually throughout the whole year. Whenever we see something, we make a note of it, put it on the list. And that would be Hawthorne from Castlegate to Cascade, Hawthorne Court, which is right off of Hawthorne, and makes sense to do at the same time. Cascade from Hawthorne to Edgewood, Atlantic from where the new paving stops near Forest Glen to the park at the end of the street, Woodside from Glasgow to 50 feet past Sylvan, and Glasgow from Braddock to Fairview, Forest Hills Road from Wilkins to Cherry Valley. Additionally, Wilkinsburg Penn Joint is replacing 8 lead service lines of the 500 block of Atlantic Avenue between Marion and Lenox. And normally when the Water Authority does some work in a street, we share the cost of paving with them. They're only required to pave half the street. We usually chip in and pave the other half to give a complete project and a complete restoration. So the borough's share of that would only be $16,000. It's a deal because we only have to pay for half the street. We got a whole street paved. The total of all those streets is estimated at $403,321, which is less than the total amount in the budget for paving for 2022. But like I said, there is some of that money that usually goes to crack sealing and hot patching. I've reviewed this with Jim, and this is our recommendation to the committee. If the committee approves this, Steve, does this have to go to full council for approval too before we put it out to bid?
For the paving? For paving,
Yes.
you mean? Yeah.
Yes.
Well, the committee needs to recommend it to council whenever you're ready to do that. That probably wouldn't happen until February. So there's time that, because they're just seeing this now. So you would.
Okay, that's fine. Whatever council authorizes it, then.
Go ahead.
Whenever a council approves it, then we will prepare specifications for whatever council recommends and approves and get it out to bid. We usually open the bids, like Steve said, late February or March. That way we're ready to go when the paving season starts in April. That's all I have to report unless there's any questions.
No, sir.
Okay, we have questions. Mr. Vioki has a question.
Yes, I noticed there are no alleyways included in the list. Are alleys part of the review process?
I'm sorry, I'm not able to hear him.
Yeah, Mr. Bianchi, if you could go closer to the microphone or find a way for us to hear, because we cannot hear you. Thank you.
I noticed there are no alleys included in the paving recommendations. Are alleys part of the review process?
Are
Yes.
alleys part of the review?
Yes, they are. There were several alleys that were looked at this year. One was put forth by the mayor and one was put forth by a citizen. And Mr. Thielecker felt that the one that the citizen put forth could be addressed by Public Works with their little paving machine. The other alley was just in need of a lot of patching, which Public Works took care of back in November, I believe. But we do look at alleys. They don't receive as high a priority because they are not as heavily traveled and usually are not fronting on houses. They're more of an accessory use, but we do look at them and they are an eligible project under this program.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Mr. Marco?
I just wanted to note for the new members of the council that the map on the wall over there is indicative of the Intercept project and the other Alcosan projects that we're responsible for. If you want to look at it in detail. Also, Alcosan has an advisory board of which I serve as an advisory member, and we periodically receive materials like that from Altus, and have an opportunity to share it with the community.
Mr. Watkins has a question too.
Question I have is, do we have a process where we contact all of the utilities that may have underground lines or underground service so that perhaps like what we did with Wilkinsburg and Joint, we can share or at least have prior to putting in a new one?
Right, we do. Dave, can you address how you handle that with utilities?
Yes, we do. We've already notified People's Gas, and Wilkinsburg Penn Joint, and notified them of our proposed paving list, and invited them to participate or get any gas or water line work done before that they want done, so that we can share the cost. But the only response we have was from Wilkinsburg Penn Joint for this lead service line in the 500 block of Atlantic. But that's the regular procedure every year that we notify gas and water. Stop.
What should happen if we resurface the road and then after that, one of the utility companies?
Our ordinance requires that utility to pave. It's very detailed as far as what they have to pave to restore it, but it's not just a patch. If they have a line replacement, they are required to, I'm sorry, my dog's barking. He doesn't bark the whole time until I start talking. They are required to pave at least half the road. If they cross the road and use both sides for the trench, then they have to pave the full width. But it's a detailed ordinance that we have in place, and it's designed to prevent just a patch down the middle of the street. Now, if they have a leak and they have an individual leak, then they just have to replace a half lane for a certain distance on each side of that leak to repair it. They don't have to pave a whole block, for example. But if they have more than four openings in one block, then they're required to pave the entire block, at least half width of the street. And if they cross over, then they have to pave more than that.
Anybody else? Mr. Erbeler?
I have a question to the council members. Usually our system works pretty well with Jimmy and again, looking at the streets. So we usually never change anything. So I would propose that we just put that list as is for motion next week, because usually the bidding, all that takes time, and there's like asphalt prices. And I think if they're given collective amount, I think early is usually better to be out there. So I would suggest that we do the motion next week. I guess.
Okay, I know that, just for the record, we have budgeted for road improvement itself approximately $348,000. So when you look at the total of 403 is the estimate, we may not have enough to cover our roads, but if you were going to do, as Mr. Erbenegger suggests, having a motion next week, that's certainly fine. I think what we've usually recommended in the past, and Jimmy or Dave, you can tell me if it's different, but I think we usually recommend putting all the roads on here that were recommended. And if you have any to add, because we can always cut, but once you do the bidding, you can never add after you've done the bidding. You can't add or change because of the process. Do you have any comments on that, Dave or Jimmy? No?
That's correct. What you said is correct. If there's any that council wanted to add, we can add them as an alternate. That doesn't commit you to do them, only if the bids come in low enough that you can afford it.
So if you want to take this list and look around the next week or add some additional, you can certainly do that as part of the motion next week. We would include this list as part of the motion that Mr. Erbenegger is recommending, but you can always add to it, change it, whatever. It's just that you cannot then later on add something that would increase or what have you. So.
Right.
Exactly what happened with those three specific criteria. Last year, this year. So I think we have a system which works, and I find we like it. But it's kind of like he was going to prevent the two council members that they have to first. Because we try to have a more independent vote.
Okay, so that motion will be on for this list next week.
Okay.
Do you have anything else?
May I
Dave?
ask, this is Jack.
Go ahead, Mr. Lawrence, go ahead.
May I ask, both Councilman DeMarco and Council President Ervelinger, could you address more carefully to the microphone? Both of you are very difficult to hear.
Okay. All right, then let's move on to the foreman's report.
Actually, Steve, if you don't mind, one last question for Dave. I apologize.
I'm sorry.
Dave, can you just please provide us high-level overview summary of the culvert project along Ardmore Boulevard? Status, when we anticipate work to get into full swing?
Yes, yes, I'd be happy to. PennDOT is planning to replace 3 culverts where Fall Run traverses under Ardmore Boulevard. They have actually begun already with some preparation work. One is in the area of our park on Cascade near the Presbyterian Church. The next one is down by the soccer field, crosses over to near a residential house. And the third one is near the old municipal building. They are planning to begin when spring breaks, when the weather breaks in the spring with the actual work itself. They may do some tree clearing and some preparation work off site, off the pavement before that. But once the warmer weather starts to come, they are going to be closing down one side of the road and shifting all traffic, opening up the traffic island and shifting all traffic to one side while they replace the culvert on one side. And then after that's done, switching everything back over. The plan, as I saw it last, was to do the 2 culverts that are closer together at one time with one crossing, so to speak, in order to minimize the disruption to the median. And also, once people get used to that traffic pattern, and it'll be easier to maintain. I believe their work schedule is to try to get everything done in 2022, but it's likely that it might spill over into 2023. Depends how things go. There's a lot of utility relocation that has to happen as part of that. The borough has some involvement, as we have sanitary sewers that are involved in all 3 locations actually, but there is only an interference in 2. And the borough's sanitary sewer has to be relocated about 5 feet to stay out of the way of the new culvert where it is being constructed. There is a program in place with PennDOT that anytime that happens, that they assume 75% of the relocation cost with any utility, and the borough has to provide the other 25%. That's already been reviewed and approved by us and by council. And there is a small area where the borough is going to have to get an additional 5 feet onto our easement for the sanitary sewer when it's moved. That's where there's a UPMC doctor's office on the east side of Ardmore at the one crossing. Jim Thielacker and I are going to approach the property owner about that. There shouldn't be any fee involved. It's a hillside that's not usable property. But we do have some involvement in that, and we will be checking on their progress as it goes. But as far as for the borough and the travelers through the borough and in the borough, you can expect some traffic delays this summer, this spring, summer, and fall on Ardmore Boulevard as traffic is shifted from one side to another.
Okay.
Are there any other questions on that project?
What will be actually hours of that delay? 9 to 3 or 8 to 5
Well,
or what?
It's once they shift the traffic over to one side, it'll be one lane in each direction, like on a semi-permanent basis until the other half is done.
Okay.
So restrictions won't be from a certain time period to a certain time period.
It's just from month to month. Yeah.
That's correct. But work itself will be limited to, I believe work is limited to the hours that are set up under the borough's ordinance. I know there was some discussion, and I believe they were asking for permission to extend the work hours. Yeah.
Where did we end up on that? Does anyone know on our approval on that? over
I don't
there?
remember.
We did.
Does
council
anyone know that?
Council did okay additional work because otherwise it would stretch the work out much longer than 2023.
Right. Does anyone know the actual hours we approved? I forget.
I'd have to look it up in the minutes. I don't know off the top of my head, but there was very few hours that they weren't doing anything.
Okay. No
think-
problem. It should be in record we approved that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a
Yeah.
long while ago, back when PennDOT was present at one of these meetings.
Yes, absolutely. I remember that. I just want it to be on record now that we did that.
I think, I don't want to belabor it on this committee meeting, and we probably should maybe spend some time thinking through this. Perhaps we can discuss it during the regular business meeting, but I think we need to kind of get fully invested in some sort of not invested in a sense of like, financially, but just, I think we need to spend some time kind of coming up with a clear and concise communication plan. Probably going to have to do that in collaboration with PennDOT, David. I'm not sure how to
Yes.
go about doing it, but I think that we need to be able to place information about detour routes, et cetera, have it accessible on our website, and try to communicate that with maybe the local news media in the form of like some sort of a press release, just thinking long term, because spring will be here in a couple of months. I know it seems far away right now, but and a lot of people I think are concerned, and I also think it's going to turn into a massive headache on the boulevard for motorists, residents, et cetera. So
That's correct. That's correct. I think we can certainly approach PennDOT and their contractor, who has been selected, and ask that they update the borough office so that things can be put on the borough's website or in the Tree City Times.
yeah.
To
Is
alert
it
the
safe
local public.
to assume that PennDOT has also named a PM for this from their side as well? Somebody that we can have, contact with to kind of make sure that we're getting the most up-to-date information on status, and then, the ability to kind of communicate things in advance, right?
I can
I
get,
thought that is part of the new Savvy Citizen plan that we will communicate through that. So I think it's something the borough manager can address.
I think
Thanks.
Savvy Citizen is definitely one of the tools we'd have to use, Jack, but I also think that we should try and put information out via our own website and social media, whatever we can.
Well, I think the goal of the communication plan we had was to address all of that, is my guess. So I don't know. I could be wrong.
No, I don't disagree. I think this is more about just making sure we're in alignment with the PennDOT PM, so that we're kind of like up to date on any changes, because the project will change, right? We kind of have a game plan, but dates and whatnot will shift as they either run into delays, et cetera. I think it's just up to us to kind of own the task of staying aligned with changes and making sure that we're communicating that through our
And you're
communications plan.
correct. It's up to us to align with what needs to be done.
Yep.
You're correct. Sure.
All right. Sorry, Steve. I apologize for all the questions. I'll turn it back over to you.
We have met with them. We have talked with them. They are aware that we want to be up to date on things. They also are handling some of the PR themselves. They've already started that. We've also put some in the Tree City Times. We'll do it again, and use other means as we can. But
Okay.
they are aware. So we have talked, and I know Dave has been involved with that too.
All right.
Or at least
Yes.
Plant Engineering has been.
yes.
Anybody else? Okay, Mr. Thielacker, Public Works, Foreman, do you have anything you want? We got a few things listed.
I just have the foreman's report. Anybody has any questions, they can ask me. Then number 2 item is we're still waiting on our replacement truck from the one that was killed by the fire in September. They're having problems getting all the parts and supplies, and they are working on it. It's truck body shop. I don't think we're going to get it sometime in February. Luckily, winter hasn't been too bad. Anybody have any questions? That's all I have.
Mr. Markham?
Are we dealing with the Westinghouse lunch basement?
Oh, yes, yeah, we are. We've spent about probably 3/4 of a day over there before the snow hit, and we cleaned a lot of stuff out. We got about another probably half a day to do some more cleaning. And then, we're gonna be putting stuff on the lodge. This is the lodge.
Oh, you talking about the Westinghouse Lodge?
No, we haven't done anything over there. I thought you were talking about.
Concerned with Westinghouse Lodge because of the, paper. I'm concerned about it being both a mold attractant and a fire hazard down there. So, I know at one time we talked about needing to order shelving of some sort. Is that something we need to put in motion sooner than later?
I'm sorry, I'm not hearing what you're saying. I thought you were talking to, go ahead.
I just wondered if we needed to order shelving for the Westinghouse Lodge basement.
No, that's-
To get the paper off the
Yeah.
floor.
The part of the bond issue, which we're going to talk about briefly in finance, is going to be over there for the Westinghouse Lodge. But one of the things that Jim and I want to do is meet with Dave Gilland over there and take a look at the basement over there. There's, it's just a question of time and having the time we have gotten over there to do it. So we know that there's a lot of stuff that needs done. I don't know that the bond issue money will be sufficient to cover all that, especially with some of the other work we're going to do. But we haven't had a chance to get over there yet. I mean, Jim and I have been down there. We've looked at it. And we've been down there a few times, but there's an awful lot of stuff that needs done, and there's not a whole lot of options. Unless there's a lot of the files that are over there are permanent files. You have to keep them. You can't get rid of them. There's no place else to put them unless you want to rent something.
I'm concerned that we get shelving given off the
Yeah,
floor
and,
because
that's one of
situation now.
many things that we're working on. So, anybody else? Mr. Vogt?
Just one question on the permanent files. Those are all digitized as well.
Those are what?
Are those permanent files digitized?
No.
Should they be?
Well, we have to keep paper right now. That's the rule. You can't you can digitize if you want, but you still have to keep the paper as far as we know right now for most of it.
I'm just worried that there is a loss and we won't have anything to back it up.
There's probably things there that we don't necessarily, we're only keeping because we're required to keep it, not because it's anything that we refer to or is absolutely important. But, there are companies that in the past, since I've started here, there are companies that approached us about digitizing everything we have, very expensive. We haven't taken advantage of any of that stuff yet. That's something that we could certainly do, but that's another, I don't know what to say other than that. I mean, anybody else?
No, sir.
Okay, then that was all we have for Public Works. So the fourth committee for tonight is Borough Property, and Mr. Erbaldinger has named Ms. Martin as the chair of that, Mr. Burley and Ms. DeMarco as members. And so when we have our meeting in February, that they will be running the meeting. Some manager's information that I have, some of this stuff is from past meetings. The outstanding item I'm not going to explain. That's just obvious. We have to maintain playground equipment. We can talk more about that at some other time. The Centennial Clock was something that's been brought up the last few months. We have a grant for the Centennial, and because of COVID, there's a lot of things that we were going to do with the Centennial that we didn't finish. One of the things we had put in there initially when we first did the grant was recommendations from council, the mayor, and other people, and one of the recommendations was to have some kind of a memorial Centennial type clock, similar to what you see on the next page or the page after that. And ordinarily I would be showing this stuff on the screen, but I can't obviously do that when we're doing a hybrid meeting. So that's the reason why I'm a little handicapped with that. But this is just some example from one company called Verdun. There may be others that do this as well, but we had dedicated about 14 to 15,000 for this. I don't know that that's enough to cover it, but regardless, if we don't spend the grant money, the grant will be up in June, and I've extended it several times already. I don't think they'll extend it again. So I just need to know for sure what you folks want to do. The other problem, of course, is since it's a grant, that came from the state. You can't just go out and hire this company. Whoops, sorry about that. You can't just go out and hire this company. Yeah, they're not on the state contract. As far as I know, there isn't anybody who does this kind of thing that's on the state contract. If it's on the state contract, we can piggyback. That's what it's called. There's a contract called Co-Stars. There's a couple of other things you can piggyback on. So that means you don't have to go through the bid requirements. The state's already done that, and you can then use their companies. That's what we do with Dell computers, for example. We tend to buy Dell. I don't want to get into discussion of whether you like that or not, but we tend to buy Dell because they're on the state contract. So it just means we don't have to go and bid things out. So as far as I can tell, there's nobody that does this. But we need to have some answers soon, because we would have to do a bid spec, we'd have to advertise it, and of course, we'd have to see where we're going to place it and what the specifications are for whatever we want to do. I know we discussed putting it up here on campus, and the mayor had some ideas. Mayor, I don't know if you want to chime in right now or not.
Sure, I'm happy to. So the previous council had decided that the centennial clock would be kind of a nice way to commemorate the centennial, and we could have some sort of a plaque kind of placed on it. So it really comes down to, you know, I think what we've identified is that central area where the flagpole and the Memorial Day commemoration area is. Like, it kind of sits like smack dab in the middle of the parking lot, right? And we were thinking about putting a clock there, something that can be seen from Greensburg Pike and Berkeley Avenue, et cetera. So at this point, I think what we've narrowed it down to, I think we have it narrowed down to 2 different vendors, right, that do this and have some sort of at least credentials, right?
I only have one vendor.
Okay. And then I think what we need to do is just put it out for bid, correct?
I'm sorry, what?
I think the next step in the process is to actually just put it out for bid. Correct.
Right, with whatever kind of specs you want, as far as height, how many faces, chiming or not chiming, et cetera. You know, power, installation, who's doing that? Are we doing that? Are they doing that, et cetera?
I think we'd have to rely on them to kind of do that. So, and then, so why don't we just pick a date and let's try and do it this week. Can you and I just get offline, or you want to call me tomorrow morning? And we'll just pick a time. I can come up early in the morning since I know you're an early bird. We can come up and do it. It's really up to you.
That way we could then show the recommendation to the council committee and
Correct.
see if they're okay with that. That would be fine.
The goal would be to try and have a recommendation for the business meeting in January.
Okay,
So maybe sometime Thursday or Friday morning early.
sure. I'll give you a call tomorrow.
All right, perfect.
So if you folks want to take a look at this, VERDIN is the name of the company. You can find them online. I think I do have it printed here. Yes, I do, at the top of the page here where all the clocks are showing. They're VERDIN. That's one example. Now, just to tie in with that, my item C under my report, 4,400 building fund, just so you know, just to talk about the clock by itself, if you folks want to do that, because the clock may be more expensive than what we have left of the grant, there is money left from the building fund. I wasn't going to go into a lot of detail on that here, because what I'm going to do in February or March is give you an information that I've done before on how to look at the borough financial reports and what these items mean on the borough financial reports. But if you looked at the borough financial reports and just look for borough building fund, you'd see several $100,000 there. And I can explain why it's there, but I don't know if you want to go into that now or if you want me to wait until I get to that point. So I'll leave it up to you if you want more information. But you could put some of that money toward the clock since it's going to go up here. Okay. My other point about the building fund is that I was going to discuss this. You'll see it in financial reports when you get the monthly reports. I was going to discuss why we have that money and why it wasn't spent yet when I take a look at all the different financial data that we're going to give you and give you a handout that shows you what everything means. But if you want me to explain it now, I will, because I understand you might think, wow, several $100,000, what the heck's he talking about? Why do we have all that money? Does anybody want me to explain it now? I'll go into it real quick. No? No? Okay, well, if you do, let me know. I'll be happy to tell you, but I will give you that information at a future finance committee meeting. Does anybody have any questions for me on any of the stuff I brought up so far, Mr. Oberheimer?
I have a comment, and I agree with the mayor. I think you and him, we should just get the bidding out, like specification for a bid, like you said, 2-phase, 10-foot tall in the price range. I don't think we can do the bidding anyway, specify exactly what design we want.
Right.
I think it has to be big anyway. So I recommend that you just agree on something like 2-phase, 10-foot, that maybe makes a child optional, so we see how much it will cost extra, and we can take it from there. I
Sure.
think there's no reason why we shouldn't have a motion next week for that.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, then there's a standing item here that the chair usually has me keep on here. That's recreation board items. That's for times when you attend meetings, Ms. Martin, and you want to report. That's why I have that here, but there's obviously no report right now. And I don't know anything new about recreation board items right now either. I don't have anything, so I'm not going to, never mind. I will start commenting and we'll keep going forever here. Engineer report is the next item. Mr. Gillen, can you give the borough property engineer report, please?
Yes, I'll be happy to. Thank you. The first item is concerning the pickleball court. As you remember, we repaved under our paving program last year. We repaved the tennis courts at Cook Park and are planning to repurpose half of that as a pickleball court. The other half would remain for basketball. The only thing that needs to be done there is to paint the lines for it. And we had two problems in the fall. One was this was not part of the paving project because they would have been a subcontractor anyway, and they would have just surcharged on top of the paving program. So it's better to contact someone that just does line painting. However, there was, like many things, a supply chain shortage of traffic paint in the fall, and they were not able to even give us a quote at that time. So we kind of deferred it until spring for two reasons. One, because they couldn't get the paint, and secondly, even if they could, the price would be higher because it is in short supply. So that will be coming up in the spring. We'll get quotes to paint the lines and complete that project. Now, the second item, we did mention before that there was, back in May of last year, we received a $19,800 grant from the state for a blight remediation project. There was one property on the list, that was 21 Marion Avenue, which has since been sold under sheriff's sale and is going to be renovated. We've gone through several other options, and the address that Mr. Branzel was putting forth was 1019 Sherwood Road.
Okay, hold on. That's the one council said in December they didn't think made sense. They wanted to revisit that. So we're going to talk with Dawn some more, maybe talk with me and Dawn, however you want to do it. So let's do that. Let's go ahead on to your next point.
Okay. The next item is the bird sanctuary observation deck. Upon approval of the committee, we can solicit proposals for the construction of this deck. Anything under $22,000, we don't have to advertise for bids. We can just get 3 quotes. And I believe it was decided by council last year that we would go with the option of the, I don't know the brand name of it, but it's the plastic boards. It's the recycled plastic boards instead of wood timbers to construct this. Marcus.
I thought council actually, like you said, agreed already to go ahead with that plastic wood option. So I don't think we need to approve it again.
I'm sorry, I'm having trouble hearing you.
I believe council in December approved it already with that plastic wood. So I don't think you need to wait for us at all. I think you have to approve it to go with the plastic wood because it's slightly more expensive.
If I'm hearing you correctly, you said council already gave approval to do that?
Yes.
Okay, so we will go ahead and get proposals and we'll try to get them for your next month's meeting. I believe there was 2 options to be included, one for a larger deck and one for a smaller deck, to see if one is more affordable or practical than the other. The final item I have is that there is a project ongoing to repaint the exterior of the Westinghouse Lodge. We sent out requests to 5 contractors. The pre-bid meeting is actually January 15th on site, where we will show the contractors the work involved. And then proposals are due by 11 a.m. on January 26th at the borough office. So next month I will have for you a list of proposals received for that painting. Any questions on that or any other items? That's all I have.
Anybody? No? Okay, then we're gonna go on to the foreman report. Mr. Thielacker, would you use the mic, please?
I just have a couple of things here. I already was talking about, we began the cleanup of the senior center over there. And we've got about another half a day of getting rid of basically junk over there.
Well, this is just removing junk so far.
Yes.
It's not everything. It's still a lot more.
And like Steve put this in there, we put stuff on municipal bid to advertise for sale. And there's some of the other stuff we can't use for eventual disposal. Advertise that also. The second thing is, he's been having trouble with,
Well, let's talk about that first. Senior center. We're trying to get this ready for finish it by the end of February. So that's one reason why we're going to try to get other equipment that's down there on municipal bid. There's 2 ways we have to take care of disposing of surplus equipment. One, we can advertise on municipal bid if we think it's something that's useful. If it's not useful, it's something, let's say a damaged chair that we want to throw away, even though it's damaged, we have to have it announced at a public meeting, usually by the borough property, a business meeting by the borough property chair. There's a certain thing we would have you announce that these things are available for bid. All we have to do to advertise is post them on the bulletin board. And then if nobody takes them, we can then dispose of them. We've done that, for example, with old computer monitors, which unfortunately we did this like 8 months ago, and I still have the computer monitors in there, just haven't thrown them away yet. We already went through that, nobody wanted them, so we're able to get rid of them. So we're going to do that. The other way, though, is municipal bids. There is a lot of old equipment from the other building, the old municipal building. It's still down there. There also is, I don't know if you bring up this desk now or not. You know what, I need to talk to you guys later about a desk, but I'm not going to bring it up right now. There is some stuff down there that we need to get rid of. The problem is there's so much little stuff. They had a library down there. They had all kinds of books and video, and some of it's VHS stuff that's probably worthless, but audio books. This library doesn't want them. I actually did, maybe I shouldn't say this in public, but I did sneak a few of the books into their what do you call it, paperback exchange over time. So I had like 2 boxes of them, and I would just put a few in at a time. So people were taking them because they're not there anymore. But there are other things there's a lot of them. That's part of the problem. I also want to make sure that nobody wants to do anything with the artwork that's down there that we were thinking about bringing up here, but unfortunately is on these gigantic, very heavy pieces of, I don't know what you want to call them, concrete board. I mean, it would take 5 guys to lift them, 5 women to lift them, whatever, They're very nice looking, but I don't know what you want to do with that kind of stuff. So there may be some things down there. We've already brought stuff up that we can use here or elsewhere, but there may be some things down there that we need to go through, plus all the old kitchen equipment, stuff like that. So some of that stuff will go on municipal, okay? And we're working to do that right now. So we've already started. Jim and I have gone down there. Dave's gone down there. We're going to go down there again. The ladies in the office have gone down to take anything out of there they could, okay? But just so you know, those are some of the things we have in there. If you have any thoughts on what else we could do with them. People don't want some of this stuff anymore. I mean, the books, we could take the half-price books or someplace like that, but even they don't want them. They'll take them, but they'll give you nothing for them. They'll just take them. So I just wanted to explain where we were and where we stand on that. Right? Anything else with that? Okay. We're working on that. We'll keep you up to date on where we are on that. Go ahead, Jim.
Item number 2, it started last winter. We started to have a few small problems with one of the furnaces over at the Westinghouse Lodge. This winter, it's been a nightmare. We just had to get one unit repaired again today. but the heat exchangers starting to go bad. So now there's 2 units over there. One is worse than the other. But we're going to need to replace at least one of them, or if you decide to replace both of them over the summer coming up, we're hoping we get to the winter. So, yeah.
I am in the process of finalizing the RFP for an energy services contract. This would be exactly the kind of thing that would be appropriate for that sort of thing. And I think if we can get through this winter, even another month or two, we'll be able to put that into the order of things we specifically want them to look at. They did audit that building as one of our bidders did audit that as a preliminary, and they indicated we would be able to get a considerably more efficient furnace in that space than is there. So,
Well, like I said, there's 2 units up on the roof, you know.
We'll keep this on the agenda so you're aware of that.
Okay.
Anybody else have anything?
Yes, this is Jack. First of all, Patty, could you readdress how you look to the mic? It's hard to hear you.
sorry, is that better? Can you hear me now?
Second of all, regarding everything cleaning up from the basement and all that stuff, can we just set a date where it's going to get done? I don't really care what that date is, but I suspect we just need to set a deadline and get it over with. Does anyone have any thoughts on that one?
The lodge basement, you mean, or the senior center we're talking about?
Yeah, the senior center, yes.
Yeah, we're trying to get that done by the end of February.
Okay, just set a date and that's it.
Yeah, we're hopeful.
Would that be okay?
Yeah. Yes, we're hopeful we can do that.
Okay.
Okay. Does anybody else have any questions for Mr. Thielacker or for Mr. Gilland? Okay, the last item under committee business report, the mayor had received a request from David Brown, Social Studies Department of Woodland Hills High School about a venue for a student summit event on March 11th, which was a Friday. They were interested in using the municipal building, and I have been telling people we're not, because of COVID, we're not letting people in to use the building, although people have been overruling me because I'm only the manager. So I don't know what you want to do about this. And Mayor, if you're still on there, did you have any more conversations with this teacher about that by any chance?
Yeah, so this request came in probably, 6-7 weeks ago, right before the pandemic really kind of took off as it did over the holidays. So it's just something to be, it's not my place to make a unilateral decision. This is something that has to be brought before council for discussion. So I think that we need to kind of, if you guys want to discuss it, it's fine. I know since that request has come in, Woodland Hills has actually switched to a different policy in response to the recent Omicron breakout as well. So I don't know if we want to just deny the request because it's too many people in a closed space. But I told them that I would bring it forward, and so I asked to have it placed on tonight's agenda.
Well, March 11th is a Friday. I'm not sure what time of day they're talking about, but we are open half a day that day. And if they're talking about using this building, I'd like to know how many people they were going to have here. Might be better to use the lodge if you wanted to give them anything, but that's again up to you folks. I have been turning people down, just so you know.
Okay.
That's again, you do it,
I would recommend that we deny due to COVID, but tell them, well, I'm sure we're doing something like that every year. Tell them we are open for future years.
Sure.
Hopefully, if COVID is gone next year.
I mean, if I can just, based on what we know right now, I think the responsible thing would be to just deny the request. I don't think that this, quite frankly, would disrupt much in terms of Woodland Hills' plans, given that right now, Like tonight, I know for a fact that they're hosting a swim meet and there's no spectators allowed, right? They're kind of new stances, no spectators allowed, no additional people. I think they're doing online learning right now. And there's just no real way to tell if this variant is going to kind of decrease or increase by the March time frame. So if we're going to deny it, I think we should do it early so it gives them an opportunity to find another place if they want to try and still hold their event.
That's exactly what I recommended. I just wanted to add a sentence that we will be open for the future to do something like that. Just like to say to the teacher who will do something like that in the future, we're open, but not this year.
Okay, Mayor, do you want to contact him? Do you want me to contact him? I don't care, just want to know.
Why don't you go ahead and do it?
Okay.
Okay.
I'll do that.
Thank you.
Does anybody else have anything for, when were we on? Borough properties. Now, 2 more committees. Okay. I'm sorry?
We wouldn't time.
Yes. Okay, 5th committee is Operations and Policy. The committee chair appointed by the council president is Mr. Lawrence with Mr. Bayoki and Mr. Burley as committee members. So they will be taking over in February when we run these committees. So I have several things, just more reminders than anything else. The first thing is everybody should have gotten an ALOM conference registration form via email. This is in April, and I explained a little bit about some reasons why you may want to go if you're a new member. I've been to a few of them. I don't tend to go to those. I go to more managers related stuff, but I do go if council requests me to go. But it's a good place to get along with other municipal officials, get to know them, and see what their problems are and what's going on with them. And it does help. And the county usually uses this as a way of imparting information to the municipalities. That used to be a lot more popular when we had a county commissioner system. And I'm not going to go into why, but there are a lot of reasons why that was something that everybody did. It's not as big a deal necessarily from that political point of view anymore, but they still do use it for things like that. So it's a good idea to consider going if you're interested. And the borough does pay for it. The only way you pay is if we pay and then you cancel. They do not pay for a spouse or a partner. Or children if you're taking children or anything like that, but they do pay for you. The reason why it comes out early is because a lot of people want to be in the hotel, and the hotel fills up pretty quickly versus being in one of the condos on the mountain or somewhere else. When I go, I prefer the condos, but that's certainly up to you folks. So I just want to call that to your attention. You should have gotten that. If you didn't, let us know in the office. We'll make sure you get that information so that you have it. We don't have any detail on any more than what's in the brochure on what topics. And they usually try to save a little bit of that because it's to be topical. I'm sorry, Mr. Lawrence.
Could it be possible to resend that information to the new council members and me, just in case they missed that? That'd be helpful.
Yeah. Did you guys get it? You did?
It doesn't matter. Just in case they missed it, resend it if you could.
They did get it. Okay. So the second item, oh, and by the way, we are what's called a banner community. That's designation from ALOM. One of the things you do to keep the banner designation is it has somebody attend this meeting. There are other things too, by the way, which I'm going to be bringing up in the future, because if you want to maintain that, there are some things we no longer do that you may want to start doing again. And I'll go into that in the future, but I just want to point out to you that is one of the things they look for. Committee vacancies, I'm going to let you take a look at this on your own. What I've done here is show you the typical committees and the terms that we have for members of those committees. We have some people who want to move in and out right now. I know that because EAC, Environmental Advisory, is changing membership because some of you are on council now. We wanted to move an alternate to a regular member. That's Chris Meadow. Is that how you say it? Meadow. So you typically vote on decisions like that. And for somebody like, is that a he or a she? Chris? It's a he? Oh, Christine. Okay. I could put that on the agenda next week for you to put her on there, since that's kind of a basic thing. This Chelsea Cohen, she's interested in zoning hearing board, and that's typically later. Usually in February, what we do is try to get all the committees, the vacancies filled in February if we can, so that they all start at the same time, March 1st. They don't all end the same time because of the different terms that you see down there, but we usually try to do that. And I just want to mention, so I don't forget, I have it on here, Wilkinsburg Penn Joint Water Authority. We currently have Vivian Braz as our member. Her term expires at the end of this year. That's the only one that has a calendar year term. So I just want to make sure you are aware of that, and I'll keep trying to remind you about that as we get closer to the end. But I show you a list of terms that are expiring in 2022 and who they are. And then some vacancies I show there at the bottom of that list. And on the next page, which is page 12, I also show you typically which committee reports to which council committee. So planning commission usually reports to Mr. Burley's committee, reports rather to Mr. Burley's committee. So does zoning hearing board. Environmental advisory usually reports to ops, but they may also report to planning and zoning. And you can read all that if you want.
Actually, my assignment sheet, there wasn't already outlined.
Oh, okay.
So it is in that sheet.
Okay, so that holds. That's the final word, Mr. Oberdinger's sheet. Does anybody have any questions? You'll just be seeing different people. Hopefully we'll get some people who want to fill in these vacancies or people who want to be reappointed. And you'll be seeing that in the next few weeks. And I'll give you what I have at the February committee meeting.
Okay.
Savvy Citizen, oh, go ahead, Mr. Lawrence.
No, please go ahead. Sorry.
Savvy Citizen, I was asked by council toward the end of last year to let's get started with this. So I activated it on December 1st. We haven't done a whole lot with it yet necessarily. I've started posting things on there, but it's only me posting right now. The reason being is that one of the things that our intern recommended and that council agreed with was we should put together some procedures and policies. Mr. Biocchi has been helping us with that and working on that. In fact, he worked very closely with the intern as we were doing that. So I definitely want to get some of that in place before we farm out to the different people who can put what information on there. For example, it's going to be helpful for Cindy Sim, our rec director, marketing events director, to be able to put her stuff on there on her own without having to go automatically through me. Although we do get to approve it, we get to see it and check it. It would be helpful for some of the office staff to be able to do that. Maybe helpful for some of the committee chairs. But I need council to decide on what those procedures and policies will be. And so I plan on providing you with an outline of some of that.
Well, Mr. Biocchi may have some input
Wait
right
a minute,
now.
Jack. Hold on.
Oh, sorry.
Until we work out the details, that this be removed from the agenda for the option policy, so we have time to look at it and then represent it and then get comments on the entire process.
Okay. Go ahead, Mr. Lawrence.
No, I was going to suggest the new council person, Mr. Biocchi, may have some input, and he can inform the new council and all of us about the status of that. Would that be okay today?
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Anybody else have anything about Savvy Citizen, the application? No. We'll be getting you more information on that. You can still sign up for it if you want in the meantime, because anybody can sign up for that and get filled in on Wilkins Township or anybody else who's using it as well.
Okay.
My last item under manager's report is every time there's a new council, I tend to give out some handouts material, and I've been doing that for a number of months now. New people know that. I've been giving you information about different things. One of the things that over the years I've been asked about, and it's really not up to me because I do not control your rules, you do, but I've been asked to some different questions about how council meetings work and how committee meetings work. So I sent you this in an email, frequently asked questions about meetings. Some of this stuff has to be adjusted because some of it is changed with the new sunshine law criteria. And I have that in red on the sheet I gave you. You should take a look at that though, because this is what your rules are. And they're posted on the borough's website. Whether you follow them or not though, is up to you. In the past, literally I've had members of council come to me and have told me, you got to tell that member he can't do that, or you got to tell that member she can't do that. And I look at them and say, I'm an employee, I'm the manager. I cannot tell that member what to do. So sometimes you guys overlook the rules. It's up to you folks to enforce them. This is what's in your rules. You might want to take a look at it on the website. Mr. Urban.
I actually was planning during February, during the second committee meeting, and Steve Culvert is present, and have Mr. Lawrence, also open policy, to kind of do a session for all of us on Sunshine Act, what's new, for you members anyway. Should we have some Salesforce, mobile phone, all that kind of things. I would like to have some time in February to discuss. To take maybe like half an hour to talk about all that stuff. So I plan to do that at the second committee meeting in February with the Culvert.
Okay. Does anybody else have anything about that?
Yeah, I would. It was very difficult to hear the President of Council, his comments, but yes, I see some concerns about that document. So I think we should push it out to February and go through things in detail. Because I think what the document you sent out may not match with the new sunshine law, and we don't want to get into trouble with that. Does that make sense?
And I'm not sure I'm following, Jack. If that's just me, though, but I'm not sure I'm following what you're saying.
Some of the details in that document you sent out don't match with the new sunshine law.
Well, and I made a note of that, and I mentioned that they're in red, but everything else is what's
right.
in your, well, everything else is what's in your rules. That's the rules.
My suggestion is we push forward with a new document that's completely updated and safe.
Okay. This is where I made a point. Oh, go ahead. Somebody else. This is where I put the solicitor's report. So, Mr. Corbel, do you have anything?
Okay, good.
Okay, Jeff, I was actually going to mention, after reviewing the rules, that Steve said, it's my advice that we do attempt to revise them from both the Sunshine Act perspective, but I also think it's an opportunity for council to review some of the non-legal issues in the rules themselves, if you would like to address them. So I can provide comment on the legal side of things, but you all should decide whether or not you want to consider. I think that's what Mr. Lawrence was referencing in his statements. So typically, well, let me go back to what I was going to say in the beginning, which is congratulations and welcome to the new members of council, since I wasn't here for the work meeting. It's good to see you all. Looking forward to working with you. But you'll know that, yes.
If I can intrude just a moment, I cannot hear anything Mr. Curl is saying. Sorry.
Is that better, Jack?
It's pretty echoey, but move on. That's okay.
And I can't push the microphone any further into my face, but I'll raise my voice as much as I can. So you'll note that in most instances where it's, I'm asked to provide a report, particularly at the voting meetings, I usually respond with nothing to report. And that doesn't mean that I'm not doing anything. It's just that many of the items, most of the items that I'm working on are not for public consumption. It is things that I will communicate with you directly in an executive session, typically that follows the meetings, or you will receive email communications from me or from me through Mr. Morris to the group. Very rarely do I bring anything up at the voting meetings. In the committee meetings, we do talk about things here or there that I've been asked to report on, etc. and I'll continue to do that. But, as of right now, from my perspective, things are on the quieter side with the borough. Not much on my plate at this point in time, but that's not atypical with the new council, and it usually gets filled up pretty quickly as you all get your feet under you and you start moving forward. So again, looking forward to working with everybody, and that's the end of my report.
Anybody have anything for the solicitor? Okay, the last item I have under ops is the committee business report, and I have 3 items there. First, Mr. Lawrence, I know you were working on the memorial bench policy. Did you have any update for anybody yet, or is that still in progress?
My plan was to hold out till February with the new council members.
Okay, I'll put that on for February. The second item, I had emailed everybody some notice because it was being circulated among Turtle Creek Valley COG members of Churchill's policy on COVID. And I got an email returned back, I believe, from Mr. Erbleton, who suggested putting it on this committee. So I wanted to do that, and I wanted to print out for you, which is attached to the very end of this packet, what Churchill actually proposed. I did not send it, by the way, as a recommendation from me. I only sent it as an informational thing. However you want to do it is fine. Some of you have seen my memos on COVID to staff already. I copy you folks on them. But they had specific policy, and it was circulating with the Council of Governments. I did not want you to not see it. So that's why I sent it out. Does anybody have anything? Mr. Overton, sure, go ahead.
Last council, I think the city of Pittsburgh did something similar. And during last council, we agreed that we want to wait and see the state meeting. But I know who copy something like that, Churchill ordinance, we will get grievances from, oh yeah, I forgot my mask. And we will get grievances from our police staff or any staff who are not vaccinated. So I think I would recommend we wait until Mr. Corporate is sure some kind of ordinance is stick and are not subject to grievances or lawsuits or that kind of stuff.
Without getting into things that we wouldn't otherwise talk about in the executive session, you are permitted as a council to mandate vaccinations for your non-union employees, so long as you provide an exemption for legitimate medical or religious reasons. That's clear. As it relates to union employees, there is a requirement under state law that you meet and discuss terms and conditions of employment before unilaterally implementing. So the city has implemented and moved to terminate folks that haven't, that are in their unions that haven't gotten vaccinated. Same at the county level, but those matters are in the middle of litigation. I will say that, and that litigation is around labor law in individual scenarios. But there are other cases from other jurisdictions where unions have attempted to obtain a court order to stop the policy, and those have all failed. None of the courts have upheld those objections to a vaccine mandate. But I can't answer what's going to happen with those individual cases through the grievance process. My view of the law is that you do have, in my view, if you do it right, the ability to wade into this and mandate it for your unionized workforces. But what I can't sit here and tell you is that you won't get a grievance or you won't be sued. The only thing that I can advise you and Mr. Colombo, our special labor counsel, is to how to do it to put you in the best position to succeed. So again, as it relates to non-union staff, you can do whatever you want. Union staff, it's a little more of a gray area. There are some potential pitfalls. It might be worth sitting down and discussing it with the bargaining units to see what their position is, see if you can reach an agreement. They may have some concerns that we can't even think about in this room about that, or maybe there's a member that has a specific concern that could be addressed that the union will stand up for. So at a minimum, you can do nothing. If you want to at least dip your toe in the water, you can ask for a meeting with both bargaining units. And if you want to move forward, a little more risky would be just to mandate. I probably would stay at do nothing or just dip your toe in the water if it's something you're interested in looking at. And I think I probably spoke a little too much about that in the public session. Mr. Watkins.
Would it be possible to draft something that says the council highly recommends all employees?
Yes, no problem.
Anybody else on that topic?
Yeah, I didn't hear the last respondent's comments. It was very
Okay.
difficult to hear.
Mr. Watkins asked if we could communicate to all of our employees and highly recommend or highly encourage them obtaining the vaccination. And I answered in the affirmative that yes, we could.
That seems safe and wise, and not that's not a problem. Recommendations are fine.
Correct. Yep.
If we want to go beyond that, I think we need to have some discussions.
We do have an executive session after the meeting next Wednesday, so I would say if you all decide you want to talk about it further, it's probably better in that setting.
Okay, let's do that. Good, sounds good. Thank you.
Sure.
Anybody else on that topic? Okay, the last item I have under committee business report, Mr. Lawrence had requested discussion about hybrid meetings in Hollywood. Mr. Lawrence, do you have some comments?
No, I was just follow up. You let us know what's going on. The technical stuff, and Angelo can help in this. Where are we going for hybrid meetings? Tonight seems a little challenging.
Yeah,
But
well,
that's fine.
it's kind of a patchwork system that we have here. So it's not perfect. That's one reason why it's a problem. I mean, it's not too bad in here. I don't know what it's like over there, over the online system. I know that Mr. Bioki had sat down with Hollywood and made specifications. We did give them a deposit. As far as I know, stuff is on order. Do you have anything more, Mr. Bioki?
I go, is it an update from the?
Sure. We'll have to get an update.
Okay, if we can do an
Go ahead, I'm
if we
sorry.
can do an update next in February and know what's going on. Tonight wasn't really positive, but we'll move on. Thanks.
Okay.
I actually wanted to commend you at the end of this meeting, because I think tonight actually, for the short notice you have, I think it worked pretty well. We may have issues with our microphones that we make it better, because it seems like that mobile microphone, like Steve Corbin is having, seems to be better than those microphones we have as council members. But I think with the TVs, it looks good, and sound we only have to work a little bit, but that's not a major issue, I think.
I know microphones, one of the things that Mr. Bioki had talked to Hollywood about, and they were looking at getting us longer ones that would be able to pick up better. But I don't know where that stands either. We'll have to find out.
Like I said, I really
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay.
I think it worked pretty well. And, you know,
Well, just an FYI, I did not hear anything that the president of the council just said. I just heard his voice, and that was
but I said, sound system needs some work. Actually, I think you're calling in, just take a minute. Mr. Mayor, how is your sound? Can you hear us better?
no, I cannot hear you at all.
I don't know if the mayor's
Nothing.
The other members who were on Zoom, actually, they must have better sound quality, because they didn't complain like you did. So,
Yeah.
but in case the sound is something we have to work on.
The problem, Mr. Lawrence, is that I don't have any way of patching the sound in to the computer so that it's all one system. So anybody speaking here, you're picking that up through the speakers in the room, and not because it's plugged into the system. I don't have any way of doing that right now. So that's something we need to look into. I agree. Until we get something more permanent up. I think you're hearing me okay, probably because I'm pretty close to the microphone.
Yeah, you're clear as a bell. The president of council is not. And yeah, you could work with Angelo on that one and see if there's a way out of this trouble. That's fine.
Okay.
We're still working through it. It's not a crisis.
Mr. Mayor, I have two questions. Again. How is you sound? Can you hear us? Because like, Zoom is better than calling in for chat.
Frank, can you hear us?
I can, in fact, hear you guys okay. It's a little bit of a strain to hear some of the members of council when they're speaking, but you just got to listen carefully is all.
Okay.
You by far are the clearest one in the room, though.
Yeah, he has the best microphone, I think.
I can move that closer, but I don't know if that would work. I have it feeding through the camera mic. So, okay, well, that's all for ops and policy. I have one more committee, finance.
Can I make one more recommendation, Steve?
Yeah,
I'm not sure if this would help, but if members of council, if we're going to do like this hybrid approach, perhaps if members of council brought their laptops to the meetings, and that might create a feedback scenario though, huh?
I think, yeah, it probably would.
Yeah.
I thought maybe you were going to suggest that I go to Pitt and get another degree in computer or tech stuff.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
As long as you don't go to Duquesne, buddy.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, no. Wow. Anybody else have anything for ops? Last thing I have then is finance. And a lot of this is informational, but even though it looks like an awful lot of stuff. The first item, every month I give a cash flow report. I don't have one ready for this month because December is not closed out yet. And I'll talk more about that when I get to item B about the budgets, but I don't anticipate any problem with our cash flow. I want to make a comment about that though when I get to item C also about the ARPA plan. But I will show you the full cash flow. My budget book has the full cash flow system for the year, so you can see how well the borough did in cash. I have that in the statistics section of the budget book, which I'm going to talk about next if nobody has any questions about cash flow, since I really don't have anything on there. I'm sorry, I forgot to mention Ms. DeMarco was appointed committee chair by Mr. Erldinger. Ms. Martin and Mr. Watkins are also committee members for finance. 2022 budgets. I will try, what I always wait to do is get the end of the year report on there so that you have year-to-date information on the budget for 2020 and you know exactly how much we spent. Now that's pre-audit. The auditors will come in and make some changes, but that's the reason why I don't have any spreadsheets in front of you right now. If anybody would like to get something though, I will give you what I have now, which has everything up to date except for the year-to-date 2021 information. Okay, so just let me know that some of the stuff that's still on the website is still good. Okay, but if you'd let me know, I'd be happy to tell you, we'll give you that information. Usually this council, because it's a new council, can, if you want, reopen the budget. No one has requested that to me, so I'm assuming that nobody has a reason or need to reopen the 2022 budget that was approved in December 2021. If you do, you're on a very, very short time frame to do something. Okay, so what I'm going to do, now that I know that for sure, what I'm going to do is get all the statistics updated with the end of the year information. As soon as I'm told by the finance staff that we've been able to close out December, and we're not done with that yet. Closing out a year takes a little bit longer than closing out just a month. So once I do that, I'll put all those numbers in, but realize most of this is coming through me. It's not that I don't have staff doing it. It's just that all the stuff is on my computer. All the stuff is stuff I put together. It's not stuff they did. So the final stuff, the final work has to come through me. So everything will be in that budget book, budget message, capital improvements, fire, not public safety, road improvement, liquid fuels, all will be in the budget book. If anybody needs to see a spreadsheet ahead of time, I can do that. And I hope to have the books published by early February, but I also hope to get the spreadsheets on the website before the end of January so that you can all see them and then either print them or I can print them for you if you want. But this is the busiest time other than September for me on budget because I have to try to get all this stuff together into one book and then get it printed and all that. So I do put the full book on the borough website so that everybody out here can see it if they want to. All citizens, residents can see it if they want to. I'm told that we do a good job with the budget book. I'm told I should submit it for GFOA's evaluation and award, but I don't have the time to do that, so I haven't done that. Yeah, well, maybe. It's not perfect, though. There's others that do a better job, but that's me maybe being self-deprecating. I don't know. But anyway, the ARPA fund item C, I put this whole thing on here, this diagram, or for those of you who are out there, this thing is on your packet, okay? Because we did get money from ARPA, the American, what does that stand for now? I can't remember.
American Rescue Plan.
Rescue Plan money. We got half of the money, about $300,000 from the federal government with very specific information about how it has to be used. I don't expect to go into it right now, but one of the things people were thinking about doing was using some of it for sewer infrastructure related costs, which is appropriate. The Treasury just recently came out with an update on what the requirements are, and I haven't had the chance to read it yet. But one of the things the GFOA, which stands for Government Finance Officers Association, has come up with is this calculator, which is this, again, diagram that you're seeing on the screen if you're remotely looking, okay? And this is GFOA's way of showing that the borough and municipality did suffer from COVID financially, more so than it thinks it did. And it's saying that, for example, we lost $513,318 in revenue because of COVID, which is it's possible. So the reason why they do this calculation is they're trying to show us justification for why some of that ARPA money should go back into the general fund. The reason why I tied that in with cash flow from item A is because one reason why our cash flow is down this year compared with previous years and other normal years is because last year we got a shot of money then too, and we put it right into the budget. This year, the shot of money we got, we haven't done anything with yet. So it's not in the budget. It could go in the budget though, in full or in part. That's something that this council will have to decide how we're going to do it. I'll keep this on the Finance Committee agenda to look at. The new members should take a look at this now though, between now and next month. Let me take a look at the Treasury Department and what their latest ruling is. I did see part of it is that they have an even simpler calculator that you can use to see how much you may have lost as a municipality from COVID. And that therefore you can use some of the ARPA funds to repay yourself for that without any penalty. The other reason why that's the big deal is because if you don't do it the right way, the Treasury will audit it and they will say you owe us this money back because you didn't use it the right way. That's why I'm trying to be very careful about it. Sewer infrastructure, we can use it for. That is one thing we know for sure, and that's even been opened up more from Treasury. I got that far on that report from Treasury, so that there is more infrastructure that can be used. But that's what this is all about, and it's here just so you can look at and the new members can read and hopefully understand or ask me questions about it if you're not sure what I'm doing here.
At this point, I think we have determined that the sewer repair work that we need to do for Alpensand will not take up the entirety of this fund. I think it comes at something like $270,000.
Somewhere around there.
And so we will have maybe $300,000 or so to decide what to do with. And I think if we can look at whether we put it into the general fund just for using for general purposes, we could attribute it to recovery of costs for personnel that were, where we had to get extra people or extra overtime because of COVID things. So I think we have about $300,000 to make a decision about.
Yeah, and you have time to make the decision. That's not, I think 2023 is when you have to have it spent by the end of 2023. So there is time. It's not anything you're in a hurry for. That's why we're being careful and taking it slow. The next item right after this is also a financial item, which I just put on here from past reports, not because I'm going to talk about it, but just to explain. When we refinanced the bond issue, we took out an extra $500,000 in money. Refinancing did a good job because it kept payments better or the same. So we were good with that. Okay. And we also got extra money out. How to use it, we're following right now Mr. Erblinger's recommendation from last year on using it for some public works purchases, equipment purchase, a backhoe and truck replacement, and using some of it for the Westinghouse Lodge. Okay. Now that's not final yet. You folks as a council will make the final decision, but we have already started spending some of it, like the backhoe and the one truck. I think it's truck 73 that I have mentioned. The number 1 is highlighted down here. Is using that money. The reason why this is critical is because when you take out a bond issue and you get extra money, you have 3 years to spend 85% of it. So we're about in the middle of those 3 years approximately right now. So we have some time to do it, but I want to make sure we follow along and know we're doing it. Council decided to do it step by step. Pay for this, get that done. Pay for this, get that done, and then go over and look at the rec lodge. And the other thing I wanted to add about that too is that when we put the down payment on the fire truck, that came out of the bond issue, but the fire fee is going to pay that back over time. Okay, and that's one reason why you'll see that in the fire fee budget. It may not be obvious, but I'll point that out to you in the future if you're not sure where it shows. But we're going to pay that $90-some thousand that we put down as a down payment on the new fire truck from the bond issue. We're going to pay that back to the bond issue, so we'll have a full $500,000 that was given us by the refinancing to use. So this is just informational on this page.
One question I have with the bond issue money that has not been allocated or earmarked at all yet. I would like to look at whether we can use some of that money as matching contribution for grant applications. For example, if we decide we want to put an electric vehicle charging station here in our borough parking lot, we would need to have a 10% match under the infrastructure bill that was passed. And would we be able to use bond funds for that kind of project?
Yes, but first that'd be up to whole council, and second, I still have, like I said, a good bit of money from the building fund. One of the things we were, for example, we were going to do was put a carport over the police cars so that they don't have to sit in the weather for a number of reasons. We didn't do that, but I now may have the money that we could afford to do that. I'm asking the architects to give me, that we used before, to give me some estimates, and then I'll come to you. I'm not just going to do it on my own. Some of the stuff I'm just doing on my own. I'll tell you why later when I get to that, about all the different things that are in the funds. But that money could come out of that too.
There are considerable numbers of funds that will be coming through the Department of Transportation or the Southwest Regional Planning Agency or the Allegheny County Regional Commission. And I looked at the preliminary guidelines for those grant awards. They're still working on the regulations, but there isn't any one of them is without match. So we're going to have to come up anywhere from 10% to 30%, in some cases 50-50, we're going to try for those. But we may need to come up with 10%, 20% matching funds in order to qualify for some of these proposals.
And that'll be your decision as a council, however you want to do it once that comes up. So there are still several pots of money where that is possible. Okay. If nobody has any questions about those things, 2 other items that I'm done. The tax collector gives us a letter every year asking us to exonerate her. And this is not just because she didn't run for re-election and now she is reappointed. This is because at the end of every year, she settles her accounts and turns it over to our delinquent collector. So you can see how much she said she did with that on the letter I attached to your agenda. What typically you do is have a motion to approve exoneration either at the January meeting or the February meeting. So if you're okay with that, I would put it on for January. Okay, so I'm just going to mark that as vote, and I'll put that on your agenda for next week. And then the last thing I have, there's a letter attached here after page 16. I mentioned here the COG request for additional funds from RAD. This is the longest explanation I'll have, and then I'll be done. Regional Asset District money, the 1% sales tax, we get a share of that every year. It's a percentage based on how much is collected from that every year. When they set this up via Act 77 back in the 90s somewhere, I forget where, in the 90s somewhere, they said that every time a municipality gets an increase in RAD fund from one year to the next, 25% of that has to go to an intergovernmental cooperation agency, which usually is considered Council of Governments, but doesn't have to be the Council of Governments. So the COG always asks us for the full amount of what our 25% of our increase is. And it says that we increased our collections from 2020 to 2021 by $34,000, and 25% of that is $8,600 plus. And they're saying, pay us, please. Just so you know, that's why I highlighted this in yellow on this part of your agenda for those of you looking here, there, is because it doesn't have to go to a COG, a Council of Government. We're members of Turtle Creek COG. It can go to another intergovernmental cooperation like the library, which was set up where we're working with C.C. Mellor Library as an intergovernmental cooperation agreement, or we still have a part of our sewer program tied in with an intergovernmental cooperation with Wilkins, where we share a sewer vector truck. It can also go to something like that or something else. COGS automatically think it should go to them. It's up to you. I just want to make sure you're aware of that. You can send it all to COG. That's up to you. But in the past, council has taken money and distributed between COG and library, or between COG and the sewer program, or all to the library, all to the sewer program. It's really up to you how you want to do that. It's not the COG who can dictate that to you.
Did we get an increase in 2021 from that?
Yeah, that's what this letter says. Yes. Yeah. So I just need you folks to decide, and then either have a motion in January or February as how you want to distribute the money. Whether it's all going to go to the COG, or whether it's going to get split up some other way, or whatever. Mr. Irvin.
I would recommend that we split it again between the library and the COG, like we kind of did most years.
Does anybody have any problem with that? Because I can put a motion next week on there if you want to send 50% to the library and 50% to the Council of Government.
We should do that.
I'm sorry, Steve, it's 50% to the library and 50% where?
Turtle Creek Council of Government.
To the COG.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'll have that as a motion on there. Does anybody have anything? And of course, that's up to you to decide at that time whether that's good or not. And you can talk about it further then, whatever. That's not a problem. If anybody has any second thoughts in a week, you can certainly discuss that in the meeting. Does anybody have anything else for finance or anything else for me? Because I don't have anything else to say. Thank God. No? Well, if you guys that are online, you're all done. You don't have any, Mr. Lawrence or Mayor, anything more? No?
No, I'm good. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you so much for running this meeting today. I think it went well, except with the sound. I can't hear myself.
No, nothing here. So I'm done.
Okay, I'm going to close out the meeting and everything. Have a good night, everybody. We'll see everybody next Wednesday night is meeting here, and then followed by an exec session also here in the borough.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a good evening.